Hello and welcome to another video review. This is the Elder Scrolls 3 Tribunal for PC and Xbox. This is the first of two expansion packs for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and it was released originally on PC in 2002, 5 months after Morrowind was released. And it was released later on Xbox with the Morrowind Game of the Year edition. That was also on PC as well. But it's interesting because this game had only a 5-month development cycle. That's for the gaming industry, that is really, really short. Minimum of a year usually for development of even expansion packs. But still, it's surprising because they released it and it had very little fanfare. The reviewers were generally not that impressed with it. So the question becomes with that, what's the big deal? Why didn't it get a massive amount of praise like Morrowind did? Is it really as lackluster as people think it is? Well, in the visual department, there really isn't anything that's too horribly different. They did add in new textures and modeling and such for the new stuff that comes with it, namely the city of Mournhold, which actually has some pretty nice architecture to it, and it actually fits in with the Morrowind lore very nicely, because it's a nice stark contrast from the mainland of Morrowind that you're visiting in Vvardenfell. And that Vvardenfell was this kind of barren landscape, but you go to Mournhold, and it's this very regal royal city kind of thing. And it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the basically imperial capital of the region. And so they make it look very nice and fancy, and they did a really good job with that. And the new equipment and such is all up to snuff with the rest of the Morrowind equipment. One thing I didn't like, though, was that they didn't really add in any new music or anything. In fact, they just kept everything from the original Morrowind, and I was just kind of unimpressed with that. But what it comes down to is the new content worth getting the expansion pack for? Now, obviously, if you got Morrowind Game of the Year edition, you already have all of this stuff included, so you may not have noticed this. But when you install Tribunal, it actually adds in this ability for the Dark Brotherhood to try to assassinate you at a certain point in the game if you're trying to sleep. And so you'll wake up in the middle of the night or whatever, and it'll say, hey, you awoken to a loud noise, and all of a sudden you get attacked by a Dark Brotherhood assassin, or two, depending on the situation. And this sparks the conspiracy, I guess you could say, where you end up having to go to Mournhold, which is the old, basically capital of Morrowind. And when you get there, you find that there's a lot of problems with the royalty. Namely, King Helseth is kind of a tyrant. And there's this big conflict between Helseth and the living god Almalexia. And so you get embroiled in this thing, and really the Temple of Almalexia's quests are the main storyline, so to speak. All of the Helseth stuff is optional, actually. And to be honest with you, the story is surprisingly decent. I mean, Morrowind's story wasn't that great. It was definitely just very flimsy, and you just ended up going off and doing whatever you wanted. But I think because Morrowind was that wide-open, kind of almost empty world, they decided to go with something different and go to a more linear sense. And that's exactly what Mournhold and just the Tribunal expansion in general is. It's very linear. And so it's a lot more focused. You actually get to see more in the storytelling than just, say, in Morrowind, where it's just kind of all over the place. And so since it's more focused, it's a little easier to follow and a little bit more involved for the player. That said, the writing is still no better than Morrowind. I mean, it's not an amazing storyline by any means. It's decent, and it holds the game together. And it's a nice, refreshing change of pace from the original Morrowind. But other than that, I really can't say that it's a particularly great storyline. But it does actually relate to Morrowind's main storyline, because you're basically fulfilling more of the Nerevaran prophecy. And you actually get to reforge the Nerevaran's lost sword, True Flame, during the course of the events of Tribunal as well. But the problem I had with Tribunal was that it just was really boring. I think part of it was that my character was a very heavy combat oriented kind of character. What I mean by that is uses heavy armor, uses long blades, and then of course can cast destructive magic as well as some other spells and such. And I came to find out that Tribunal actually upped the difficulty considerably once you got into Mournhold especially, because the Dark Brotherhood's actually kind of tough, and they added in weapons that are basically second only to Daedric. So the new content does actually fit in fairly decently with the other stuff. The problem is that it's really heavily biased. And what I mean by that is you have the Adamantium short sword and claymore, but no long sword. Adamantium armor is medium. The Royal Guard armor is medium. You have Dark Brotherhood armor, which is light. And you also have one new suit of heavy armor, but it's for the High Ordinators, and if you start wearing it, then they will all start trying to kill you. Thus, the game is heavily biased towards medium armor wielding characters, and so it becomes kind of a problem unless you're a fairly high level heavy armor wearing character or light armor wearing character and you have good gear on you. So if you go into this thing at a fairly low level, you're going to have a lot of problems with it, and that's exactly what happened to me. So I came back later, higher level, way better stats, and it was still pretty challenging actually. I was kind of surprised by that. But, ultimately, Tribunal just didn't feel quite as fun as Morrowind did, and I don't really know why. That's the problem. It just lacks something that I can't really explain that made Morrowind a blast to play. But you go into Tribunal stuff, sure it's more focused, sure it's smaller, more condensed, and a nice refreshing change of pace from Morrowind, but it just isn't quite as fun. Still, it's decently integrated. I will say that the teleportation requirement to get to Mournhold is a little bit irritating, and you can't levitate while you're there, which is kind of dumb too. But ultimately, some of the design choices in Tribunal just kind of let it down too. Like, say you fight goblins. Yeah, goblins were an insanely weak enemy in both Arena and Daggerfall. So why are they a fairly tough enemy here in Tribunal? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, overall I'd say Tribunal is actually a pretty lackluster expansion pack. Ultimately, it just doesn't really add enough to the game to make it worth justifying a standalone purchase for. If you got it in Game of the Year edition, then, you know, you're just going to play through it anyway, probably. But I can't justify getting this as standalone. I give it a 2.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching.